We've been growing with the vertical planters now over the last year, and there's actually a reason I'm out here on this super windy day to start this video with you guys, because we've had a few learnings about things like sighting and propping, especially when there's wind. There's been learnings about the nutrients, but there's also been a lot of benefits that we've had from not having to do a lot of the weeding and getting the bug pressure and stuff by being able to grow up here. We've also been able to chase the sun a lot better, and hopefully in this video, if you have been thinking about this way of growing, the learnings that we've had will be beneficial to you. It's January at the moment, and this is the 2-month update on how the Mr Stacky Smart Farm has been going for us. It has been quite a bit of a learning curve across the first couple of months of growing with this, because it is quite a different way of growing compared to regular Mr Stackies that we've been using. It is a bit different when you're planting in kind of the coir with the perlite, and instead of kind of relying on soil and the nutrients within, you're using a liquid nutrient. Yeah, that's definitely been probably one of the bigger learnings for us, is managing that nutrient. And that's these two here. There's like a different colour, so it's nice and readily identifiable which one is which. Not that it really matters, because both go in at the same time anyway. And basically we just use this little cup to grab the amounts needed, and then we just pour them in the base. Every couple of weeks you actually need to flush the bottom as well. And the easiest way that we've kind of found to do that is we just unhook this piece here, sit it down towards the ground and let it drain out. And then we refill it again, top up the nutrients, and kind of go from there. But one of the things with the nutrients that we did not get right at the start was not realising that you do actually get quite a bit of evaporation with these. And what that meant was I hadn't actually picked up that the water level on the side was getting quite low. And as that was happening, the nutrients were really concentrating in there. And when we had the first plantings, if you saw that first planting video, you would have seen that we planted seedlings in these ones, but we planted seeds on the outside ones. And what I've found is that, because it took me a little while to kind of work out that that was happening and the nutrient levels were high, things like the seedlings where you had tomatoes and eggplants and capsicum, they actually all grew really, really well. But we had a problem with the seeds. They did largely strike, but as you can see here, and I've kind of left this one in just to be able to show you, I'll probably actually pull it out today and replant. This is a spring onion. You can see how they're kind of burnt looking, and that was the case pretty much with all the little seedlings that popped up. The nutrient levels were just too high and they kind of got this burnt look to them. So yeah, that was just something that I worked out, is that you do really need to kind of watch those nutrient levels and make sure it's right. Now the way that we do that is with this thing, and this has been an absolute blessing. That there is a EC meter, and that helps you know whether the EC is in the right range. There's also some great information that we got with this, where it does talk about the different types of veggies and the EC ranges that you need. Now, we'll say when I tested, when we were having that issue with the concentration, it was getting up around 3. So yeah, that was definitely too much for those little seedlings that were popping up from seed at the time, and that's why they were getting burned. The other thing I've kind of learned with the nutrient levels as well is that there's different types of crops, and it actually talks about it again in the instructions. There's soft crops and heavy crops, and they do have different needs. Now again, if you saw that original planting video of these, I planted both soft crops and also heavy crops as well, so that probably wasn't the right thing to do, and that's something that I'll look to do a little bit different in the future. Because we did have those high nutrient levels, you know, these ones at the top here, again, the eggplants and the tomatoes and the capsicum, basil as well, they have absolutely grown wonderfully. But a lot of those soft crops, you know, they really did struggle. So yeah, that's just something to watch for, is just to try and plant things with like nutrient needs. The other type of plant that I'm a little unsure about is things like the onions. So you can see in here, these onions, they were planted from seedlings and they're growing, but they're not growing hugely well. And I just think it might be a little bit too wet for these guys in here. So I am thinking things like onion and garlic, I might not grow in there because, you know, there's another example there where it's not growing as well. Yeah, I don't know. You know, when you sit these types of vegetables in soggy ground, you know, often you do get issues with rot. Maybe that's an issue with this sort of thing as well. I'm still kind of working through that. So if you do hydroponics, it would be actually really interesting to know, do you guys have success with things like onions? Now, the other problem we had was when we went away at Christmas on holidays, and we had a sitter here at the time looking after our property. There was a bit of an incident where the top levels of this middle stacky, they actually fell off in a big wind event, and that pulled this what do we call it, pipe. Sorry guys, it's early morning. It's also why the camera's facing out at the moment and I'm not on camera because I'm still in my jammies. But yeah, so essentially it pulled that pipe out, and that pulled upwards, and that pulled it off of the pump that is in the bottom. And yeah, basically it required just kind of taking these levels off and then reconnecting that back in again. So that was pretty straightforward to do, but it is something just to think about with the planting of these and also where you situate it. So this spot here being on the deck, we do actually get a bit of wind through here. So I do need to think about how I plant again in the future, because I do want to keep this here. It's a great spot for it, kind of away from the garden where there's bugs. It also gets some of the best light on the entire property, which is why we put it here, but it does get a bit of wind. So I think what I need to do is actually plant differently to what I've done with this one here, where you can see I've got all the things that grew really big and heavy at the top, but at the bottom I had the smaller things, the things like the onions. The reason I did that is I was thinking, put the stuff with the high light requirements at the top and put the things that can deal with lower light, you know, things like your lettuces and onions and stuff like that at the bottom, because they might get shading from the top. But now that we've been growing for a little while, I actually think I need to think a little bit more about the weight of things and not have things that are so heavy on the top, and have those towards the bottom and kind of the light things up the top. The other thing that I've learned is that there is some things that I thought were going to be kind of small that have grown huge because these are so productive. You can see the tomato plant that's here. This one here is a patio tomato. It was shown in the pictures when I bought it as a seedling, because I only bought one, as this tiny little tomato plant in a little kind of hanging patio pot, and that's why I thought it'd be really good for this. But it has absolutely loved being in this system. It has been super, super productive. It's grown really, really well, and therefore it's a lot heavier than we expected it to be. So yeah, it's a great thing that it's so productive, but do just keep in mind that might influence how heavy things become when it grows in this system. In terms of it being comparative to some of the other things I've got growing in the garden, you can see here I've got an eggplant. The ones that I've got down in the garden at the moment aren't even close to producing, but this one here is flowering incredibly well. And I did actually spot this morning, where is it, down here? We're seeing the first eggplant starting to grow. So that is also pretty exciting, the levels of productivity that we're seeing with this. And we have already harvested a lot off of this in this first couple of months. In fact, just last week I did a bit of a replanting, and you can see already we've got the little seedlings popping up. So that's how things are going so far after the first couple of months of growing. Definitely lots of learnings. It is a different way of growing. Hopefully, as we really are starting to nail the way of growing now and the nutrients and the topping up and all that sort of stuff, it'll become even more productive. Time for another update on how the hydroponic planters are going. Today, the job is to pick a lot of the basil, and I'm going to be turning that into a bit of a pesto, because you can see there is a huge amount of basil that's grown on here, And they were ones that we grew from seed. That is something that has been really, really good in these planters. We have also been continuing to harvest a lot of like the beetroot, all the radishes are gone, and we've got the new ones that are growing really well. They did all pop up really quick. We have also been harvesting a lot of the tomatoes. So it's not really much in the way of red ones in here at the moment. I think there's a couple starting to turn red hiding in there at the moment, but they have been producing really, really well in here as well. The chilies are growing extremely well. So there's a couple of examples of different ones that we've got on here. Where are we? This one here, that's one of the Korean chilies. So that's the one we use for doing the kimchi. But what I really, really, really want to show you guys right now is behind here. Eggplants. We struggle to grow eggplants up here in the Dandenong Ranges. Like, we do tend to find that even in the greenhouse, I don't get good harvests, but we are getting lots off of this. And they are really good looking ones as well. Like, look at that. In fact, I'm probably going to pick that one. There's another one there. In fact, underneath, let's see if I can get you right under here. There's even a couple more under there. And that's all off kind of this one plant coming out of this spot here. And then when I go around the other side, I've got another plant. So I think there was only 2 that I put in. And again, you can kind of see there's an eggplant. And there's another one. So I'm so excited to finally have success with growing eggplants up here. You can probably see there's also lots and lots of flowers. So we should have plenty more coming before the end of summer. By way of comparison, in here, that plant there, in fact I'll take you in there, that is probably the best of the eggplants in the garden that we have at the moment. So that's that one. So you can see it's flowering, but we're not even at the stage yet where we've got an eggplant off that. And that was in the greenhouse, and that pot has been moved out here to the garden in the last month or so. So yeah, it's definitely growing way, way better with the eggplant in the vertical hydroponic planter. The other thing that's going well in here is the capsicums. There is one of the capsicums. Hasn't turned red yet, but there has been a couple red already that I've picked. There's another one down in there as well. So yeah, the summer veggies are absolutely loving these Mr Stacky planters, and I'm loving growing in them because it's just easy keeping the water up to them, especially now that we've got into that rhythm of keeping the reservoirs topped up so that the nutrient levels are kind of maintained. Yeah, all right, I'm going to get into picking, and I'll leave it there for today until the next update. I'm just filling up because the water level's down again a little bit, and we've got a few really, really hot days coming. But I also thought while I was out here, I'd just show you really quickly around here, this cabbage that we've grown. Let's see if I can get you right around there. How awesome does that look? That is probably the best cabbage I think I've ever grown in my life, and I thought I'd better show it to you now because I know hubby's been eyeballing it off and he's planning to do a bit of a cook with that. So yeah, I just want to show you how cool that cabbage is, particularly considering I've not grown one here this well before, ever. I've had to move a bit quickly today, but wanted to show you something that has happened. And this has happened a couple of times now, but it's the first time I've caught it in the act without the whole thing going dry. One thing that is something to look out for is, see this pool of water on the ground? That is not from kind of like a leak or anything like that with the unit. It was actually this plant here, and what was happening is, the way this works is you get these drips. Hopefully we'll see one happen in just a second from here. And of course, as soon as I film, it slows down. There we go. Basically what was happening was the drip was going from here onto this plant, and then it was rolling off the leaves, and it was actually rolling out of the stacky. And I actually caught it just as it was kind of to the bottom here, and that's something to kind of watch for because you don't want the pump running dry on these. So yeah, lucky I caught it. As I said, I have had this happen a couple of other times and pretty much just came over to the solar panel and flipped it over to turn it off until I could get some water back in there. This time it wasn't completely empty, so I've just thrown the hose on really quick, and yeah, I'm filling that back up. The negative is that it's not just water that's gone out of this, that's also all the nutrients, so I'm going to have to top up the nutrients. It just, yeah, I don't know, it's a little bit annoying when that happens because it's a waste of nutrients, but it is a bit of a product of these being so abundant. Whoop, gotta get that back in. I did want to grab just one super quick little clip for you guys, and that's just to show you all the little seedlings that have popped up in this last week. In fact, I've had way more than just these because I've been having to pluck them out. I way overplanted with all these, but yeah, even thinning them, there's still plenty in here. Here's one cool thing I hadn't expected when we started using the Smart Farm. The bees, so we're beekeepers, they are using this as a waterer, and that's because they can get the moisture off the surface and they don't have any risk of drowning in water, which they can sometimes do where there's pools of water and nowhere to climb out. So yeah, just thought I would share that because that's pretty cool too if you are a beekeeper and you keep one of these. Our audio actually didn't work out for this clip, but I just wanted to show you this because at this point we did run out of the nutrient, and this is where we needed to use the second lot of bags that came back when we got our order. So I was just kind of popping the part A and part B in the different containers and showing how I mix that up. It's the end of autumn and we had a bit of a disaster. This fell over a couple of nights ago. Hubby's just straightened all the fallen pots, but I am a little worried that I might have cooked the pump. Because the pump, I have chucked back in here for now, but when it fell over, the pump actually kind of flicked out here and it was sitting behind and nobody picked that up straight away. And it must have been pumping over here dry, which is not great for a submersible pump. So yeah, I've got a little bit of work ahead to put all this back together, but that's a job that's going to have to wait until the weekend when I've got some time. And yeah, I probably do need to think about how do we stop this from falling over when we do get big winds, because here in the valley and on this spot on the deck, it's where I want to have this because it's the best sun, but it does get exposed to some pretty insane winds. Okay, I am going to give this a very quick test to see if it does still work. As we do have sun at the moment. Crossing everything. Yeah, I don't know that's actually doing anything. Bugger. Might need a replacement pump. Woohoo! Or not. I got it going. So it looks like I had a little problem where it had pulled on this, and at the back you can kind of see there's a bit of a joiner there. It must have pulled that somehow. It looked like it was connected, but I pulled it apart, I reconnected it, and it started. So I don't know that there's anything in here that would be needing to reset, but yeah, it's a pretty straightforward setup. It literally is just a solar panel with that connector coming through to here, but either way, it is working and I don't need to find a new pump, so that is so good. Let me just turn this off because I don't need it running at the moment, which I'd normally do just by flipping the solar panel over. One thing I think I will do while this is apart is, I'm not sure if you can see in the bottom there, but there's a lot of the coir, just kind of sedimenty sort of material in the bottom. And I'm thinking, given I've got this apart at the moment, and given this is where the intake for the pump is, what I might do is use this as an opportunity to actually drain this out completely, and we'll get this all freshened up again. But yeah, I'm probably am going to do that on the weekend as well, because I just don't have time right now. Back together. And just giving it a flush. Wind is pretty wild out here, so we've done a little bit of work just to try and prop all of these up. We've just been trying all different ideas, and this one here is just getting bits of dowel and other bits of sticks and stuff and just kind of propping it underneath. Ooh, there's that wind. And yeah, just kind of hoping as it pushes each side that that will help prop it up and that'll stop it from going over again. Doesn't look the prettiest, but I definitely don't want them falling, and I really don't want to move them from this spot. It is the best spot for sun, but it's also the best spot to cop the really bad winds through this area here. I am so glad we propped these up. It is wild out here tonight, but so far that seems to be working. Winter plants wise, I don't have an awful lot still going in these. I've got some of the lettuces, I've got some of the carrots, and we have been picking carrots out of here. There is actually a few little seedlings that have continued popping up, like the lettuce here. We've also got some spring onions still going. And over here, these are the last remnants of all of our summer veg. I haven't pulled them out because I am wondering if they're actually going to overwinter in this. I've never had success with things like chili or capsicum or eggplant. In fact, you can probably get an idea of how many eggplant we had because that one's still there and we didn't pick it. We had so many. It was absolutely incredible. But I'm leaving those go to see if they do overwinter. And the reason is everything else in our garden has died. These are still alive. And that to me is really unusual. So I am doing a bit of experimenting, as I often do, and just seeing if they will continue growing. I figure, why not have a go? There's no reason to pull them out at the moment. It's not like I'm planting anything else in here at the moment. But yeah, it's all a little bit of an experiment, that one. It's the end of winter now, and we've had these for, well, it's going on about a year. So I thought this would be a good time just to share with you our final thoughts on this growing system, and yeah, just a bit of a wrap up as well on all those learnings that we've had. So I'm guessing the key thing you want to know is whether it is actually worthwhile growing in these type of planters, particularly considering they are a bit of an investment. You know, we were really lucky when we got them. We got them for 40% off, but you know, they're not always on sale like that. Although I will say the company that we got them from, they do seem to have some good sales every so often. So that is worth having a bit of a look out for as well. With the investment, you know, I'm hoping to get quite a few years of growing out of them. And if we keep getting the sort of produce out of them that we got over this last year, I think they will essentially pay for themselves. One of the reasons for that is a lot of the crops that did really well are things that are usually quite expensive. You know, things like the eggplants, things like the chilies, the capsicums. You know, if I buy an eggplant and just a single one of them at the shops, they can be, you know, you can spend like $4 or $5. And I didn't actually count how many we got, but I reckon we probably got 20, you know, maybe more off of these. and heaps of chilies. There was heaps of capsicums as well, and they were really nice, good, healthy ones. You know, all those things that we often struggle with down in the big garden bed areas, they seem to do really, really well in these planters. We've also had really good successions of plantings. That's been the other thing that's been really great with these. Being able to turn over a lot of like the leafy greens, being able to do so in this spot here meant that I didn't have a lot of the same bug pressure that we have down in the garden areas. So, you know, we were getting lots of leafy greens without lots of chemicals and stuff, and without a lot of the holes and getting eaten away that we sometimes have down in the garden areas with those, particularly the tender greens, the things like the bok chow and the lettuces and stuff like that. It felt like they were turning over and growing a lot quicker as well. You know, as soon as we were pulling things out, we were able to put more seeds in, turn things over. So yeah, there's a lot more productivity because of that. The other thing that I found is that there was a lot less weeding with these, and not having to weed to me is always an absolute blessing around here, because it always feels like there is so much weeding that needs doing. So that was really cool as well. Yeah, like just the abundance of this type of growing. That was probably the key thing that really makes me like this, and very keen to keep growing like this in the future. But we also had some learnings, some things that didn't go well. I think probably the biggest thing is the siting of these here. You know, the fact that we've got it here on the deck where it's exposed to those really big winds has meant that they did blow over twice since we've had these now. That is not ideal. That's why we've got those dowels and the like propping these up at the moment, which is not the most attractive thing. So I do want to try and deal with that. Ideally, you just wouldn't have it in a spot like we've got here. Like this is us creating this issue, definitely, by having them in this area here. But I don't have another spot that I can really think to put them where I'm going to get as good a sun as I have in this spot. So yeah, just do be mindful. If you get these, do think about putting them in a spot where they're not going to get exposed to really big winds like we've had here. Because yeah, you definitely don't want them becoming Mr. Tippies instead of Mr. Stackies. So do just watch that. The nutrients was probably the other really big learning for us, as we were learning how to use this different style of growing. Like, we're very familiar with growing in the ground, but with these, you really do just need to pay attention to the nutrient levels and the water levels. Like, we did find that in these, you do get a lot of evaporation. And when you get the evaporation, the nutrients do concentrate. I hadn't picked that up straight away. So it was something just to kind of, I suppose, learn for me, but hopefully you can benefit from that learning, that as the water level goes down, it concentrates, the nutrient levels get really high, and that can burn some of the sensitive plants. So that did happen to me at the start. Once I worked out about that happening, it was really just a matter of keeping the water levels right. Checking the EC every so often just to make sure that it was in the right zone for the sort of plants that we were growing. And yeah, just kind of maintaining it from there. The other thing to watch for is sometimes when they get really, really abundant, some of the leafy stuff can actually direct water to fall on the outside. So that was the other thing that you probably saw me share as well. That happened to us. It happened a couple of times. And at the start, I couldn't really work out where was this water going. But yeah, it just takes one leaf to kind of direct the water, and it starts landing outside of the system instead of ending up in the bottom in the little reservoir area there. So yeah, definitely another thing there to watch out for. But overall, absolutely loving the system, and definitely keen to keep growing like this. Yeah, I think now that I've got all those learnings under the belt, the next year of growing with these, getting them started in spring and in summer as well, that, you know, they're probably going to be even better again. Oh, and with one other learning. The other one was the heavy plants that we had at the top, making sure that I've got those down towards the bottom and the lighter stuff at the top as well. I think that's going to help with stability too, and things not falling over. So I'll definitely plant them out a little bit different come this next spring too. So yeah, that's pretty much our experience over this last year. Hopefully you can benefit from all those learnings that we've had, and I'm definitely going to benefit from them in the season ahead. And yeah, absolutely loving it. Looking forward to continue growing this way, and hopefully you've enjoyed following along in our first year of growing in the hydroponic vertical planters. As always, thanks a bunch for joining, and catch you later.